Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cosmere Connections. We're a collective of book-loving nerds rereading Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere series. From book 1 to book 16 million, we'll be uncovering every secret connection there is to find. Today, we are joined by Swiggity Swoo,
The most outspoken men are often the least discerning, and that's why I'm talking loudly now.
John,
I should start raising my own pigs.
Kay,
Colo.
and I'm ReaderWarrior. And today, we're going to be talking about Elantris Part 1, Elantris chapters 9 through 13. We're halfway through Part 1.
We're
Hooray!
speeding through this book.
Let's go.
It's a short book.
Okay. It's a fairly short. Yeah.
Comparatively,
Okay.
yes.
Well, I've been doing the audiobook, but then doing my notes on the paperback, and not realizing how far you've come until you open to the right chapter. You're like, whoa, I didn't know we were this far.
Yeah,
There's not as many chapters, but the chapters are long.
Yeah, some of the chapters are really long.
Looking at you, last Wraithen chapter of this episode.
How about chapter 11? Yeah, that's a long one.
Yeah,
Holy doozies. But
Okay.
I'm getting ahead of myself. Literally.
Okay. Chapter 9. Even though he had just been publicly eviscerated by Serene, Wraithen can't help but feel amazed by her attack. He had grown complacent and somewhat bored in his plans in Duladel, but here was a challenge, one that Deloth all but froths at in anger. Deloth calls her a member of the only race hated by Lord Yadeth, to which Wraithen explains that Yadeth only hates those who hate him, capital H, and that most Teos do not even know of Yadeth's word. Everybody unites under Fjordell rule and faith. Your Lord Yah. Holy cow, that's a lot of Yah. When everyone unites under Fjordell rule and faith, Lord Yadeth will return. But Delof says there are multiple ways to skin a Sion, and that by killing all the heathens and leaving only those that follow Shu-Dereth, the end result would be the same.
Do Sions even have skin?
I don't know.
No.
I wanted something better than skin a cat.
All my friends are heathens, don't you know?
All my friends are heathens too.
Wait for him to ask you who you know. And copyright infringement.
Yeah. I'd say that Wraithen has a love of the game in this chapter. His reaction to Serene's foiling him, I do think it's kind of cool, and it makes me like him a lot more, him just being like open to that challenge and impressed with her. It speaks a lot to his character, especially because most people underestimate her.
Mm-hmm. And so far, the only thing we really know about Wraithen is he doesn't want a bloodbath to occur, which on the morality scale is most people don't generally like that.
So he's only as good as most people.
Exactly, but here we have he has even though I was just beaten by my own words, that was fun.
Yeah, he he's one of the first people to kind of see past Serene's dumb blonde act that she's been putting on. With the way that her questions were aimed, even though she was still acting like she didn't understand what was going on, he could tell that she did know what was happening.
And it's cool because I think when Wraithen's preaching, he's pretty much just running scripts at this point. He talks about his mind is wandering, but he's still doing the motions and getting the reactions. To have somebody go and show up and to actually break his rhythm must have been exciting.
Yeah.
And his kind of general lack of reaction shows exactly how rote it has become for him too. He's just so taken out of left field. He's just what? You
What?
know, like
Nobody
totally
deserves the
clobbered.
word.
Nobody calls him Mr. Yadith. Anything else for that subsection? Okay. Hrathen heads off to an inn to meet with the nobles. His words have been only part of the plan to convert Erelon. Idane mocks him, but Hrathen says that Serene is just a ditzy princess and that his speech wasn't intended for her, which kind of goes against what we were just saying, but I think like he's just playing to the nobles.
Yeah, he's like, okay, you've portrayed yourself as being a ditzy princess, so like, even though I know that you're smarter than you're pretending, like I'm going to push that narrative because it helps benefit me.
And also, like, imagine trying. No, she's not actually an idiot. She's like genius.
Yeah.
And, like, how difficult that would be to claim.
That would be
Yeah.
really frustrating.
That would really make Wraithen look like an extra scoop of fruit. Just
Yeah. He sits, and the nobles do so too, asking how Hrathen's conversion would bring them power. Hrathen notices Telrai. I want to say Telri, but it.
Telrai.
Telrai?
Yeah, Telrii.
Yeah, but isn't the first and second vowels supposed to be? This is where an audio podcast is fun.
Telri?
So
I like Telrai.
that's how they pronounce it in the graphic audio. I forget how they pronounce it in the regular.
They pronounce it Telri in the
Do they?
regular
Okay.
audio.
I feel like Telrai kind of fits better into what they
Yeah,
pushed
because
so
the
far.
two vowel
Yeah.
thing, the first one is supposed to be a hard vowel, so.
I don't
Except
know.
for the E. Just ignore the E.
Well, when they're paired.
Nah. Okay,
This
so
is the
Telrai.
chapter where Hrathen says, "Great Jadith below." That line struck me like
Yes.
that's kind of comparing him to like the devil.
Well, remind us
is and
about
it
that in
isn't.
the spoilers section, because this is really the only clue that I'm really aware of that speaks to who Yadith was originally.
So, like,
Okay.
we don't know if, like, in their religion, dying sends you up or sends you down, which way is good, which way is bad.
If there even is a separation of good and bad.
If there isn't, yeah, exactly.
And I think it's cool that when you're reading Sanderson, like, sometimes the rules of symbolism don't apply because it could be like a red herring.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and he takes influence from so many different global cultures, too, that it's hard to, hard to always know which, or if any, culture he might be piggybacking.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hrathen noticed Telrai in the back, a duke and one of the most powerful men in Erelon, and says power comes from perception of the enemy. Even with the Elantrians seemingly gone, people still believe that they will return. Unless Iadon were to do something about it, then he, and the nobles by extension, will never have true power. And Shu Korath is too weak of a religion to do so. The younger nobles seem to be moved as Hrathen hints that other nations in the east that align themselves with Fjordell give favorable positions of power to Yadith's followers. Raymier wants an outright promise, but Hrathen avoids it, teasing that once Elantris and Erelon were the Wyrns, then those who most supported his teachings would end up in aristocratic seats. I feel like my words are like shuffled in my mouth anytime I have to talk. Hrathen had to be careful with his words. Iadon likely wouldn't be too pleased if he outright spoke of treason. Warren, which looks like Warren, a strict and pious man, said that Warren, a strict and pious man, says that such a revolution would take time to construct a new religion in the old one's place, and Hrathen reminds him that Elantris fell 10 years ago. Change can come with blinding speed, he says, and with Hrathen's help, they can be ready for it. As the meeting draws to a close, Deloff reminds them that if they do not cleanse the Elantrians, they will cleanse them instead. The nobles leave, but Hrathen asks Telri to stick around. He has a plan he might be interested in. And
Nice. So it's basically just, he not only has to convince the people of Erelon at large, but he also has to convince the other, was it Shudirith priests? And you also kind of see like the opposite side of what we saw with Sereni, where it was nice to have somebody kind of trying to match wits with him, like this Aiden guy, or it might have been somebody else. That was my quote from the beginning. The most outspoken, usually the least discerning.
Mm-hmm.
He like easily convinced these dudes because all they really want, it seems like, is tangible, spendable rewards.
They want power. They don't really care how they get it. They want power.
In which, while Sereni was able to like specifically point out pieces in the Shudirith doctrine to that, these people are just like, okay, but don't you people do this, or what about this? And
But
he's like,
they
well,
don't.
yeah,
They don't really care about doctrine.
they
don't. They just want to know that if they follow this, if they say that they're going to follow this, that it will help them gain power. They don't really care about what Sereni was talking about the actual like theological side of it.
Yeah.
Right.
But I bet if Serena was in this meeting, she'd be like making a comment like, oh, doesn't the Lord Yearn get like all the money and everybody else just trickles down, drown or something? Like she would be able to break apart all of this as well, but they don't know anything about it.
It's cool. It's a cool book because it's a cool book. But it's a cool book for exploring religion.
That should be the quote of in the description. It's a cool book.
It's a cool book. Somebody should do a podcast on it.
It's a cool book for exploring religion in that way, like showing all sides of it,
mm-hmm.
the good and bad. Should we get into chapter 10?
Yeah.
Begin the chapter.
I had chapter 10. Suli. This chapter starts with the word Suli. Suli, I don't think this is a good idea. I'm just going to read the chapter now. Galadon and Raiden are continuing to recruit members of New Elantrians for their cause, despite resistance from the other gangs. 3 new arrivals spur Raiden to use Galadon as bait and trick the 3 into following him back to their lair, whereupon he interrogates them on their skills and backgrounds, albeit in an uplifting, we can really use that sort of way. A woman named Mare can weave. A workman named Ryle, I guess that'd be Ryle.
Yep.
So there was a workman named Ryle, and after hearing a riveting speech from Mareshi, Saelin, an ex-soldier in Count Aendel's personal legion, join Raiden's little band. So he's got a woman who can weave and a soldier and a guy who used to work on buildings.
I thought it'd be Mayo.
Wait, what's this?
I just you said it was Mare, and I was like, okay, but wouldn't it be May Air?
How is it spelled? Is there 2 A's?
With 2 A's.
Oh gosh, I think it auto-corrected to 2 R's on my notes. But yeah, May Ayer. That sounds a bit right.
I think in the audiobook they pronounce it like Mayeri.
Yeah, that's kind of what's tickling my brain, but
Yeah.
I'm not really for sure. So
Ron.
D nice.
That's where they got this. So
Brandon just watched that one.
Pretty sure this book came out first, but I
Yeah.
digress.
after splitting up
Say,
food
Quillen.
between everyone, Raiden instructs Rai Isle to build a roof over the building as Marashi explains Elantrian life to the newcomers. Soon Galadon arrives, having tricked the gang members into thinking he'd on a rooftop again. Soon he and Raiden and Galagon begin discussing Raiden's plans. He wants to give the Elantrians a sense of purpose, as opposed to wallowing in their misery. Galadon recognizes the building Raiden has chosen as his base of operations as a Karethi church. Yes, the Elantrians allowed other religions within their godly city walls because they were chill like that.
That might be my favorite note.
Raiden and Galadon then go to check out Aeanden. He's quite mad, it seems, raving incoherently to a court of mystified destitutes. Aeanden claimed to be a baron before the Sheod, but Raoden recognizes him as the famous sculptor Tan, not to be confused with Buddy Tan. Raoden's confidence about Aeanden is the clue that finally allows Galadon to piece together Raoden's true identity. Perhaps he shouldn't have used the first Aeon of his name as his fake name, even if it does mean spirit. Galadon has a cow over this, and Raoden asks him to reveal his anime backstory. In somewhat
The best of
anticlimactic
this.
fashion, Galadon says he was once a farmer. Raoden asks where all the younglings are, and Galadon says they don't last long, Zuli.
Mr. Skywalker! There's too many of them.
But before Spirit can dwell on that, a Sion flies by. The blotchy patterns on it look like that of Raoden's own skin, and it's not just any Sion, it's Raoden's very own, driven mad by the Sheod. Even Galadon recognizes the toll this has on Raoden's spirit.
Sad.
And that's pretty much it.
Very concise.
Very funny.
You just decided to lay into the jokes this time.
Yeah.
Towards the end. Yeah.
Well, I for one appreciate it.
Yep.
Because otherwise this would be a kind of dour chapter, especially with that closing bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that Raoden, like, even though like he's suffering as a lantern, is like, oh, you got the worst of it, my friend.
Yeah, I have something to say about this that would be a lot better in the spoiler section, but it just reminds me of a certain other type of relationship.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
The only
And my
thing is
only other
I was gonna say, sorry, I didn't. Does anyone know the name of his Sion? I didn't put that in my notes.
Ayin,
Yeah.
Ain.
which means wisdom, I believe.
That's cool.
I will double check that though, just to be sure. Yep, wisdom. My only other comment about this chapter was the mock trials and execution. It's like mock trials is like everything's fake except for the axe. Where did he get the axe?
Right?
Yeah.
Well, later
I
on
think it's
we
a
know that
figurative
Kurt.
axe.
Also, no, I think it might be an actual axe because we know that Karada. This is
Has
in my
spears.
chapter. Is that they have metal weapons, not just spears. They say metal weapons.
Yeah.
So like, we probably found it somewhere.
I guess my question is, why wouldn't they? I mean, it's this huge city. There's got to be some weapons somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do Elantrians need weapons for? Same
To
with
sell
oil.
them.
True. Why would an Elantrian have an axe?
To cut wood.
Why would they need
Why
cut
when they could
wood?
just go
Yeah,
and then
fire.
it goes.
In Aragon books, there's the elves have magic, and they can pretty much do whatever they want. So a lot of elves like don't use it because it means more to them to like do something by hand.
Yeah.
The same is true for Christmas.
Or there was an axe throwing shop somewhere.
We do this for fun.
This was a really progressive people. Like they had escape rooms and
I love that.
no using aeons. That's cheating.
Those like rage rooms where you just go in and break a bunch of glass.
Fireball, fireball, fireball.
That's a Dave and Buster's, Sully.
A Davy and Boosties.
Okay.
I got nothing else for this chapter.
Yeah, I think we covered it.
Where's my cursor? There it is. I found it. Okay. So, chapter 11. Kayan and Lukel are talking about the poor turnout for their meeting when Yondel complains about not having been fed yet and jokes that he only came for the food in the first place. A lot of introductions go on between Kayan and Serene. He kind of explains who each of the men are and what their reasons for joining a treasonous meeting would be and what their goals might be and how they feel about the other people that are here, and it's a lot of... But eventually, something actually happens when Royale complains that the food is taking too long. And so they actually sit down to eat. Kayan tries to give Serene one last out before everything really, truly settles in. But she assures him that she is prepared and dedicated to going forward with the plan. Ahane, and I can't remember which one Ahane is now. I think he's the older one. It doesn't matter.
Yes. No, Ahane is the younger one whose farm is not doing well.
No.
Okay.
Yes.
No, that's
yeah. Royale is the older one. Yeah.
I thought it was an E. Are we talking about the one who has the chasm in his backyard?
Maybe. I can't keep
Really?
any of
No.
these people
I can't.
straight.
There's
most part.
Idon, I
two
think.
names that sound similar to each other that I...
Okay, so there's Royale and Ahane. They're the ones that are sort of like the two Muppets that are just teasing each other.
Right.
Okay.
Then there's what's his name?
Eondel is the one who has the chasm in his backyard.
Okay.
Yes.
So you are right with Ahane is the old man, one of the old men.
Yeah. So, eventually, Serene kind of convinces them that, she can hold her own in politics. And I'm talking, like, eventually being, like, 10, maybe 15 pages later. Like, this is like, a lot of talking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brandon, you gotta cut this a bit or, like, make it more fun.
I think he gets a grip on it after this a little bit. I think this is just, like, him going a little bit, like, footloose for a while. He's, like, just kind of getting into it, and like, it kind of ran away with him, and it just kind of stayed because it makes sense in the book.
You can't cut it.
It is a charming chapter. It's just dull to talk about because it's a lot of, like, Serene kind of convincing them that she can talk without stumbling over her own words, which is more than I can say for myself most of the time.
Also, another note is that we have a second 3-month timeline.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, because, what's his
the
name?
Tax season.
Yeah, and if he doesn't get his numbers up, he's going to lose his title.
Yes.
Edane.
Yes.
So, eventually somebody mentions trials and asks what Serene is going to be doing for her widow's trial, which she has no clue about. She's never heard this term before. And nobody really explains to her what it is exactly. It's just that it's a tradition in Kai, and nobody's really going to expect her to do it, being so new to the city and not even really having been married, even though she's married legally.
I think they mentioned that it was a holdover from Elantris
Yes,
as
Yeah.
they
well.
do. Yeah, you are correct. She also finds out about the balls that have been held in court on a regular basis, and plots to have each of the conspirators that are there invite her to the balls so that she can mingle and get to know the court. And then they chit-chat a little more about other stuff that's really not terribly important as the meal progresses.
Because this is
Why
a
doesn't
very
she-
patriarchal society, so she doesn't get invited to anything.
Well, it's more that nobody knows her and she's supposed to be in mourning and
No,
all of
it's
that stuff.
also the fact that she doesn't have a husband. So,
Yeah.
and all
Well,
of the
yeah,
invitations go to the men.
That is true. That is
Like-
true.
And
You are correct.
she makes a comment like, that's very backwards, and somebody else says, no, it's traditional. And I'm like, well, traditional doesn't
Both.
necessarily mean backwards, but traditional doesn't necessarily mean right.
I'm kind of
So-
surprised there's like no character in this book who like is attracted to Sereni.
Well,
So
they
far.
kind of explain that away quite a bit through just her being a progressive and also the culture of where she is being kind of a little misogynistic, you know, especially given the king's nature.
Also, all of these people are
I
like
guess that's kind of what I
old.
mean.
Yeah.
Like
All these people are like really older nobles. So like kind of it would be a little bit creepy. I do know that the Cosmere Chronicles, they have somebody where they have one person who's read it going over with two people who haven't. They've got this woman Sheeta, and she just completely imagined this as a reverse harem. Like she imagined every single person was going to be a love interest for Serene after reading this chapter.
That's hilarious.
that's funny.
It's
Like it makes sense
even
that
more hilarious in the spoiler section.
Yeah. Yeah.
well, it makes sense that like because you know you want like Raoden and Sereni to end up together. So like adding that plot line at all would just be maybe a bit much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So eventually, they start talking about actually important stuff, like Aedan's mismanagement of the kingdom,
What's that?
and Serene leads the men very deftly away from a violent revolution as a sort of solution to this whole thing, and towards an economic one. She convinces them to allow the peasants who work for them to keep some of the profits, to encourage them to work harder, feeding them well, providing clothing and housing, and some general kindness to them. And the final point being that this plan causes some potential risk to their coffers, but saves them the risk to their lives, which everybody's pretty much on board for.
So overworking a people, the production declines, but giving them the freedom to pursue what they want and prove themselves makes things go up. Whoa. Holy cow! No way!
Well, it's also combined with the fact that like this is like something that hasn't like it's only been 10 years since the people who are in the peasant class were free.
Yeah.
Like, so they're gonna be upset and not be wanting to work as hard, partially because they remember when they didn't have to work as hard. For
Or,
what they
well,
have now.
when they didn't have a guy on a horse chasing them with a riding crop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can't
it's,
help
it's
but
a,
imagine what would Kelsey say about this.
Kelsey
just go
would
kill
be
him.
in Raythan's shoes.
So, eventually, the menfolk promise to try Serene's plan, even though it takes a little bit of bullying in certain cases to make that happen. Roll out.
I mean, Serene is kind of a bully to everyone that she meets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She just kind of bullies them into doing what she wants. It's just kind of her personality.
She definitely has a habit of just kind of tromping over other people's thoughts and speeches and just, yeah. You know I'm right. which it's hard to argue when she actually is, but you know. So the meal comes to an end, and Kai-Ein and Ro'ile are speaking after the meeting over some fancy wine, talking about how near Sereni was to losing her grip on the meeting and the plan. But then they kind of come to the conclusion that she's sort of the new life of the team, the new spirit keeping them up and running and going.
And she doesn't like when she comes up with her plan to, hey, here's how we're gonna beat it with economics. She doesn't like throw it out as an idea and let the others mull it over. She's like, no, we're gonna come to a decision right here, right now. We've got a timetable.
Right, and y'all are gonna do it
Yeah.
because I say so.
Yep, because I said so, and I'm in charge now.
Yeah.
So,
But also, sorry,
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say she's also like, well, we got Harath in here, and he's obviously up to no good. So the sooner we, overthrow Iadon and replace him with somebody as a good leader, the less chances his plan will work.
Right.
True.
And she does get a little pushback about that because, oh, it's just one priest. What possible harm could he be? And she's like, I'm pretty sure that's the guy that overtook Duladel. Like, he's a problem. And they're all like, nah, okay, fine. Like, they just kind of go with it. So she's Sereni sits down with Kai-Ein and Royal, and they discuss a little bit more about this and that, and part of that was Sereni's sort of misgivings that perhaps there was foul play in Raoden's death. And Sereni says she'll investigate, but she will do it quietly so as not to arouse suspicions. Mostly through the form of sending Aishi into the dungeons to figure out what's going on in there. And then this is where they talk about, the threat of Hrathen and, his connection to Duladel. And finally, after a whopping hour and 10 minutes in the audiobook,
Jeez.
this chapter comes to a close. I did not realize most chapters are like 25-ish minutes. This one I did not realize was more than twice that. Until I sat down and started doing notes, and I'm just like, "Oh boy!"
It keeps going. It just keeps going.
So really quickly, to go over the characters, because I feel like we got them a little mixed up. So we got Sereni, main character, Cain, Unky K, Lukel, Unky K's son.
Yep.
Eondel is the one who had the private army, and he was the one saying, like, let's, fight. Shudan is the Jindo person, which Sereni makes a kind of racist comment when she says...
I mean, yeah, but it's complimentary, so...
Still racist. If his heart is as Jindo as his skin...
I mean... Yeah... I guess.
Royale and Ahon are the ones that are always bickering back and forth, and Edon is the one with the chasm in his backyard.
Yes.
Thank you
Got
for
it all
summarizing
figured
that.
out.
There's a 0.27% chance I will remember that and get that straight next time.
I'm trying to memorize it, so I'm curious these specific characters.
It's no Survivor's Crew, that's for sure.
Right?
No.
Well, and it's... Yeah, they're just...
Rich Noble,
they're
Rich Noble, Rich
minor
Noble, Rich
characters.
Noble.
Right. So,
Right.
Yeah.
And there's not really a whole lot to distinguish them from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least not at this juncture.
Yeah.
I mean, it would help. Well, like Mistborn, they all have different superpowers, so we're going from that to like, yeah, they're all just kind of different family members. Like, not to say that they aren't super well characterized. Like, I think but they're just less tropey for sure.
Yeah, and their different characterizations don't exactly shine differently.
Yeah. It seems like they all have very similar motivations.
Well, yeah, especially at this, meeting of how to take over the kingdom.
Yeah.
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 So,
But I think. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna
Go
change
ahead.
the
No,
subject.
go
You
ahead.
can say.
No, I was just gonna move on. So if you've got something else, please.
I'm done.
Yeah, I think this is like the first chapter where Serene makes the realization that she's the princess still.
Yes, that is an
Yes.
excellent point that I kind of glossed over. She, for the first time, leverages her position during these conversations. It's part of how she, and it's not even her really that does it. It's Royale, I think, who's kind of like, is that any way to, or no, it's Shuden.
Shuden.
Yeah, who's like, is
Would
that
we
any way
be
to talk
calling
to
her
this?
girl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is a really, really excellent point that I totally glossed right over. So thank you.
Yeah. And the fact that she is the princess of Erewhon. Not only a princess of Teod, which she's been a princess of Teod her whole life, but this is new and she keeps forgetting.
Yeah, they're like, Cain, you're not a normal person. Your brother is the king of Teod. Your niece is the princess of Teod and Erewhon. Come on.
And you're wealthy beyond reason.
Yeah.
So, yeah, people are starting to wonder about Cain just a little bit.
The most
That's all I
interesting
got
man
for
in the
you.
world. But I'm ready to move on.
Sorry, I was just processing how they would pronounce Dos Equis in Cell, or on Cell. It's not a vowel, so I think it would just still be...
Dosikis?
Idosekis.
Yeah. All right. So chapter 12, after that slog of a intrigue meeting, is concise and vaguely entertaining. Or, well,
Elantris.
yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
So Hrathen is thinking about language and how it affects preaching and the conversation process, and it bothers him that he has to speak to these people not in the holy mother tongue of Swordish, but in their native languages. And
Fjordell, not Swordish.
I thought,
No, they
Okay.
speak.
Swordish
Fjord-
is like close to it.
Yeah,
It's like the country right next to Fjordell, because remember, Lukiel's wife is Fjordish.
is Swordish.
right.
Fjordish.
Yeah,
But okay.
they speak
I haven't-
Fjordell though, not Swordish.
Okay. What was it?
Fjordell.
Fjordell. Okay. So, well, I mean, oops.
It's like the difference between like Norway and Sweden.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was more like Italian versus Latin. Like, they speak Latin in Rome, but everywhere else is like it's Italian. Like, it was okay. My misunderstanding. They were speaking Fjordell, or these other languages instead of Fjordell. But he does what he must, and he is thinking about all of this while he's giving a sermon to the people. He's varying the volume and the timbre and the pitch and the rhythm of his voice, and he's doing all of this stuff, and he's also kind of thinking about the hierarchy of the church, because that's what he's preaching about, and encouraging people to swear themselves to this rank so that those people who are sworn to the next rank, and they all make this great big chain that leads back to Wern and eventually Yadeth. He kind of gets done with his speech, and everybody's kind of like, oh, very nice, that was nice. And all of a sudden, Delof just jumps up on the stage and starts having a Thrasher concert about, like, slay the Elantrians. Like, he's jumping around, he's screaming, he's impassioned, he's, like, turning red and spitting everywhere. And people are like, yeah, screw Elantris, they suck! And they're totally impassioned by what's happening in front of them. And Hrathen is just like, I wish I had a little of that. but he still shouldn't be doing this. And eventually, Telrai comes up and talks to Wraithen, and they kind of acknowledge the virtues of having the little man speak after him to kind of impassion the crowd, because Telrai thinks that Wraithen was losing the crowd and it was getting boring and, whatever. And then he asks about the deal they had discussed previously, but we still don't know the exact terms or what's really going on there. So Wraithen then, they kind of part ways a little bit, and Deloth comes up, and Wraithen admonishes him for, doing that without running it by Wraithen first. And he kind of lets it slide, though, because it worked and it was effective. And Wraithen goes back to his chambers, presumably to sulk, but no. He actually is meditating and kind of going through this prayer routine. And he takes this special little pendant off his necklace. He takes out a locked box, and he goes through all these, fancy combinations and puzzle box maneuvers. You got to slide this little panel that reveals a switch that opens up a chamber on the bottom, and this whole thing.
You got to cross your eyes to look at the special pattern, look at it at the exact right angle.
Yeah, it was maybe
Tilt
the
your
same people
head
who
at a
made these
45
Elantrian
degree
escape rooms.
Then you got to tip it on its, on its side. Anyway,
clap and spin in a circle 6 times.
He finally gets it open to reveal a Seon. Heresy, except only kind of, because it's his position in the church that allows him the use of the thing in the first place, and he's only allowed to use it to contact Wyrn, which he does. He tells the thing, "No talkie, get me Wyrn," and it goes, "Okay." And eventually Wyrn shows up, and he, Wraithen says, "Hey, I have a proposal regarding one of the nobles of Aerolon," and then the chapter ends before we can find out anything, infuriatingly. So the plots, they are afoot. Possibly an ankle.
I remember that blowing my mind the first time hearing that. Just another wrinkle. Because I don't know, how? Why? This whole time he's been, everything he's been saying about the Elantrians, he's even questioning their power at points, and then he knows and uses a Seon. I obviously, we're not in the spoiler section, so we're not going to say what this means, but I did like this as a chapter closer of just a total mind blow moment.
Really? I didn't.
I mean, it was definitely it's a question wrapped inside an enigma. That was harder to say than I thought it would be.
I found
we
it.
Have this
Sorry.
This little mini gobsmack of, wait, why is he using this sort of heretical creature to do his stuff? But why won't they tell us what's going on?
Yeah.
I think if I were to do it, knowing what, with my eyes as a writer, and I think if Brandon were to come at this whole second half of the chapter would be cut out. Because outside of the reveal that he has a Seon, that can be done later in the book, it ends exactly the same way as Wraithen's last chapter, where it's I got a plan, you want to hear about it?
Yeah, we do.
And we don't hear about it.
That's fair.
And I think does that fairly often in this book, where he ends chapters with cliffhangers.
I'm not against, especially as a fanfic writer, we have to continually do a cliffhanger, because we can't just oh, you start the next chapter. You have to draw people into you have to make them want to wait however many weeks, days, months it'll take you to write it. So you have to do some form. But having the same cliffhanger for a same character kind of is boring. And I feel even him having a Seon is cool, and it adds a whole new wrinkle, because it makes him a heretic to his own religion. And we saw at the beginning, even feels that way because he can't speak in Fjordelian. But then they introduce the big bad guy, the Pope of this
The Pope
religion,
of evil.
and you don't get anything evil from the Pope. Oh, it's like, oh, he has a hawkish nose. You don't get any descriptors of like him or the weight it has to do this. You're still wrapped up on, oh, he has a Seon.
He has a hawkish nose. He's Hoid.
Confirmed.
But like,
Kidding.
That's
He's
different.
not.
I feel like this.
Just for it's not Hoid.
Yeah. But I feel like this whole section kind of just like doesn't add anything, really. And if you were to have the entire focus of this chapter be about Hrathen's speech and have him like do the speech and show how he's made it a formula, because like that's what he ultimately starts thinking about is, oh, I gotta say it at this point, I gotta raise my voice here, I gotta do this thing then, and show that where like he predicts, oh, here's when I gotta do this part, and then you have Delof and like show Delof, which this chapter really makes me hate Delof because this is exactly the kind of person I hate in my religion, and seeing these hate-mongering pastors with bigotry just makes me angry to no bounds. And like show that, and then have that just be the chapter.
I think it's plot relevant to see the parts after that. I guess if you feel like it would be better organized a different way, sure, but the things that are kind of appended to the end of the chapter, like they are plot relevant. Like, I mean, it's the first time that we see an actual spoken line from Wyrn.
But it has no weight to it. It doesn't. Here's the evil Pope, and he's just like, "What do you want?" Like, for all we know, the Pope is on the toilet.
He could be.
The only thing I can say, like, besides obviously the effect it had on me was just making me question why they had a Seon, but also like I guess at that time not really understanding what a Seon was either, and so still being really curious and intrigued by them.
Exactly, and like,
and then
we're
also,
still
like,
getting. Sorry.
Well, it's all right. I'm good.
No, after you. Sorry.
Well, it's like the one thing that Hrathen has over Delof anymore. He's kind of seeing like, oh, I've lost my. It's like almost to say he's kind of lost his real sense of faith, like his real belief in it. And I mean, it's no wonder he's preaching hatred towards the Elantrians and then turning around and using their technology.
Kind of part of it is like, without getting too spoilery, you can have like a part later in the book where like it's revealed that he has a Seon, and have like the weight of the facts like we've built up. Oh, using a Seon or any sort of Elantrian magic is bad. Because all we've gotten so far is Fjordo good. We're gonna pass these off as demons. They didn't really have magic, or we're gonna claim they didn't. And Hrathen has like committed slate heresy multiple times.
Well, and we also have, if they don't convert, they're all gonna die.
Exactly. So like, I do like this book. I'm trying not to. I just feel like if Brandon were to rewrite this scene would happen later and would have such a bigger effect.
I can see that.
I think the visuals of it actually do have a pretty good effect, because if you kind of think about it, like, you can liken it to the scene in episode 1 where the Emperor is talking to the Trade Federation guys, and he's like, I will send my apprentice Darth Maul, and then he steps into the screen and he just kind of goes like this, and everybody's like, right? Like, that's kind of a similar feeling that you get.
Okay, but also nobody really cared about Darth Maul in that scene. It's only at the scene when like he pulls out the lightsaber, and then the first one juts out, and then the other side juts out. That people are like, "Oh my gosh!" That's the scene everybody really remembers of Darth Maul.
I don't know. Clearly, I remembered that other scene.
Well, I also remember that scene, but when you think of like Darth Maul in the movies, the first thing you think is like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon like pull out their lightsaber, and then the second one shoots out of the other side of his.
I mean, yeah, it's because it's the first time that an alternative lightsaber had ever been put forward. You know, it's I don't know.
So, chapter 13.
I was gonna say, welcome to Star Wars
13.
Connection. Okay, I do
Review
one other
of the
note.
Sith.
One other nitpicky note: 4 stacked books is not a good unit of measurement.
I mean, there's a lot of not so great units of measurement that get used in fiction in general, so
Yeah.
we'll let
Yeah.
that slide.
Okay, so chapter 13. So we are back to Reread. So Reread and Galadon are hanging out in the chapel, and Reread has convinced Galadon to let him take some of the books out of the library. And Galadon is very like touchy about the books. Like he very much like doesn't like the fact that the books are out right now and desperately wants to get them back in the library as soon as possible. Raoden finds 2 books that are important. One is written entirely in Aeons and is about Aeon Door. So Raoden is like, oh my gosh, finally, I found a book that's actually useful. And then the second one is a dictionary of Aeons.
Aeons and dummies. Aeons for dummies.
So that he can use the second book to translate the first book. To
Kind of
learn
important.
more about
Cool.
Aeons. So Galadon plans to go take the books back, but as they're hanging out there, in rolls up Karada, who is, if we remember, she is one of the 3 gang leaders. And before this happens, almost totally forgot about this. There's a new person who shows up, who comes in and asks if he can know the secret, because he has heard that the people in Raoden's group are not hungry. And so
Right.
he wants to know the secret, or how to stop the hunger, because he is so close to just giving up.
He's also been in Elantris for a year.
Yes, he has been in Elantris for over a year, and he is very close to giving up and becoming a Hoid. So Raoden welcomes him with open arms, finds out that he used to be a street cleaner. So Raoden is like, perfect. We need that. Can you clean these streets? Like, get the grime out? Can you clean the temple? All the walls, all the floors in this temple. We need to get the grime out of here. And he agrees to join Raoden's group and to help. Then in walks Karada, the third one of the gang leaders. She is from the palace. She lives in the palace, and she is considered the most lenient out of all of the gang leaders. She is also the one who has broken out multiple times from Elantris, just to remind people about who she is or background on her. And she rolls up, and she looks around, and she tells her thugs to destroy everything and to break everyone's bones.
The most lenient one.
Yes. Because the most recent person that Raoden grabbed and brought into his group was supposed to have been hers. Was supposed to have gone to her, his offerings. And Raoden got them instead. So, she crossed him. He
Yes,
crossed
yes,
her.
yes.
And so
Now they would fight.
So, but before that happens, Rayon's like, whoa, 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 slow down, hold. What if we make a deal instead? Like, why don't you not do that? Let's make a deal. Like, I can get you into the palace because we know that she has been wanting to get into Iodon's palace for some reason. So she agrees. They make a deal that he will help her get out of Elantris and into Iodon's palace, and in return, she will not harm his people and will leave them alone. So how they're gonna get out of Elantris is that they are going to go through the river. So
Already dead, Cola.
yep, they're already dead, so you don't need to breathe. And Rayoden was like, I've already tested this. I held my breath for 30 minutes. Don't need to breathe. And I wasn't, my lungs weren't even tired. So, like, I didn't even feel a thing. Don't need to breathe. So, you can go through the water. So, they go down the well into the Erelon River, which passes under Elantris and then into Kai and through Kai, and it passes right past the palace. So they take the river into the palace, and Rayoden shows her a secret passage into the palace that he learned about when he was a teenager. His dad showed him this passage just in case that they needed to get out for some reason. Because Iodon is paranoid. So
She's like, this has only happened in fairy tales. And I'm like, I want a secret passageway in my house.
Yeah. So they go through the passageway. Before they do, though, Rayoden makes her promise that she's not planning to kill Iodon. Which she agrees to. She says, yeah, no, I'm not planning. That's not my plan. So they go through the palace. They sneak through the palace. Karada is clearly very skilled at sneaking. Because she's very light on her feet, doesn't make any noise, very quietly is the one opening and closing the doors for them. And they make their way to the barracks of the palace soldiers, to where the families are. And they go into one specific room, and she kneels down next to a small sleeping child. And she stays there for a second, and then she gets up.
She doesn't stab the child, Reader. Come on.
She stays there for a second, she stands up, and they leave. And on their way out, they meet a soldier that Rayoden tricks into thinking that he's going to kill him with Aeons, which is kind of a fun scene. And they're able to get out, and he steals the sword. He steals the sword.
Cool.
So they make their way back to Elantris. On their way back, she tells Rayoden that was her daughter. And she had never gotten to say goodbye to her daughter when she was taken by the Shaod. So her daughter never knew what happened to her. So she left a note for her daughter as well as the necklace that she had always been planning to give her daughter. Which is sweet. And the man was her husband. The soldier was her husband, and he didn't recognize her at all. She's a little bit distraught about that fact, that he didn't even recognize her. Which is sad.
Yeah. Hey,
how long ago did this happen?
It was
and did he know
a year ago. It was a year ago. And I assume that he knew, considering the fact that they were husband and wife and probably slept in the same bed.
That's still
but maybe like
yeah. Exactly how transformative the Shaod really is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which the Aeon he used is Aeon Shio, which is tied to Shaod.
Right. Means death.
Yep. I thought that was nice.
It's kind of crazy that if your partner gets the Shaod, you know, that's it for you guys? Like,
Yeah, they're dead. They're considered dead.
But you could still, you could still talk to them and interact with them. That's gotta be, like, that's harsh.
Yeah.
There's gotta be some Elantrian sympathizers out there.
Yeah, maybe. But so they make their way back to Elantris, and Karada agrees to join forces with Raoden. She also knows that he's the prince, because
His
she lived in the
secret.
palace. She lived in the palace. Of course, she knew that he was the prince. The second that she saw him, she knew that he was the prince. Like,
Which is kind of weird considering the previous thing that we just talked about.
yeah. But it might also have to do with the fact that he hasn't been in Elantris as long, because it is noted that the longer you stay in Elantris, the more like your face gets really wrinkly, and it looks older than you actually are. So
Plus, Galadon could figure it out.
yeah, Galadon figured it out based on his name though. Karada just
Galadon's...
recognized him.
I love when Galadon's like, wait a second. So your name is Rao. The king has a son.
Yeah. So they agree. It says that she is going to show him something. And she shows him in the palace is that she has taken all of the children, and she takes care of all of the children in Elantris. And for some reason, the children are better able to resist the hunger and the pain from the scrapes and the bruises than the adults. And they are running around, they are happy, they're laughing, they're playing, they're being kids, which is really nice. And she has another room where the children who are hoed are kept.
Very far away.
Yes, very far away from the other children, because she doesn't want to have that sadness for the other children to see that. And yeah, so Raoden ends up making it back to the church, and Galadon is so happy that he's alive.
Go!
Galadon likes to pretend that he doesn't really like Raoden, or that he's annoyed at Raoden, but he cares about him so much. He was so worried that Raoden was gonna get killed. And Raoden's response was, "How could I die? We're already dead, bud." And
That's awesome.
And he informs him that Karada will be joining them in the morning.
So I don't mean to be a stickler, but you forgot kind of the food thing.
Oh, that they saw food when they were out and they decided not to eat it or steal it?
Okay, well, yes to that, and how I love that.
Oh, that. Yes, I did forget that. I know what you're talking about. Sorry, continue.
I just love that the reason they don't take the food is because there wasn't enough for all their people. It wasn't that, oh, we'll get in trouble or we'll get caught. It's like there's not enough to go around.
Yeah. Yes, so while they're walking back, Raoden tells Karada what his plan is, which is to use, so one of the offerings that the people are given when they get put into Elantris is corn, specifically seed corn that can be planted and grown. So he is planning to take that seed corn and grow crops and grow food for the people of Elantris.
Genius.
Raoden's awesome. I love that he's just trying to turn the whole situation around. like he's trying to give the Elantrians purpose again and make the best of his situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like just listening to this at work has been so inspiring, you know.
I love the fact that Raoden is no longer being reactionary. That's what everybody else is doing. They're reacting to the current events and focused on dealing with that. Whilst Raoden is actually looking forward and trying to, instead of being reactionary, trying to be preventive.
Yeah, he's definitely being very forward thinking. He's not like he's not
Bless you.
focusing. Oh, no, I dropped something and I accidentally scraped my microphone. That's my bad.
Oh, I thought you blew a tire.
I'm so sorry.
It's like the pressure, like airlock pressure door just got open. Proactive. That's what he is. He's being proactive.
Yes, he's being very
Yes.
proactive instead of reactive.
And he's doing the same thing Sereni is, of trying to like give people a feeling like their work matters and they're not just trying to survive.
Mm-hmm.
My only other note is that, man, it sure is lucky that we have a farmer in our group.
Yeah.
And now
It's
all I
kinda
can
like-
picture is Cartman singing his little song while he's hoeing the field.
It is kind of like the Mistborn crew, except instead of like different allomantic powers, they just have like trades.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
And that I do
And-
think is kind of cool.
And I also like that Karada went like, okay, this group now, this new gang now has like 6 people in it. We got to put a stop to that. And then by the end of the day, okay, all my people, now his people.
Well, it wasn't even like we gotta put a stop to it because they're getting too big. It was more like they stole our food and we need that food for the children. So like
Break their legs.
we can't keep this going. Like you can't steal from us again. Like
I
We're
also have to
gonna
wonder
have to
if
make
it,
an example.
yeah. I also have to wonder if it was a little bit proactive in like we have a current, not really stable, but stability with what's going on. A whole new gang will throw everything out of whack, and I can't risk my people getting hurt.
maybe.
Because like Mad Guy over there, we don't know anything about the third gang, and she's got all these children she's got to protect. So
Hmm.
Yeah, I think so.
that's all I got for this chapter set.
I have
Anybody
2
else?
little notes for the spoiler section, but that's it, and they're very tiny.
Okay.
Oh, is it?
Okay. Well, next time we're going to be covering the next 5 chapters, which will be chapters 14 through 18. But it is time to head into the spoiler realm. So if you have not finished this book, the entire series, or potentially the entire Cosmere, then we recommend that you stop here because it is likely that we will talk about everything and anything. But if you are up to date, feel free to stick around because it is likely that we'll bring up details you may have missed or plot threads still yet to come. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, star, heart, whatever it is on this podcast. Don't be afraid to comment your own thoughts and predictions. You can find us at CosmereConnectionsPod@gmail.com, at CConnectionsPod on Twitter, and we even have our own Facebook group. We would love to hear from you. If this where we must part, I say but a lot in this. But if this where we must part, then my name is ReaderWarrior, and I have been joined by Swiggity Swoo,
Thanks for playing. See you next time.
John,
When's the pork gonna be ready?
and Kay.
Have a good one.
And don't forget, there's always another connection. We're back. Spoilers.
Spoiler time.
Okay, so back to the very first one, chapter 9. This was Horathan's chapter when he, has his, well, not the meeting with the lords yet, but
Yeah, this is the meeting with the lords.
Yeah, but before that is the part where he's reacting to Sereni's public whooping. Really says a lot about Beloff when, like, hey, let's just kill all the heathens.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't convert them, slaughter them.
If you can't beat them, kill them.
His thought is, don't even try, just kill them.
Exactly.
You can't unbelieve if you're dead.
True. Then you got Horathan with all of the nobles.
Well, wait,
in which
it didn't. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I have like ADHD or something.
Yeah, I think I do too. I need to get diagnosed.
I genuinely, sorry about that.
My only thing is, I don't specifically remember what his deal with Telri is.
Oh,
Nobody
his
does.
deal.
Nobody knows yet.
Oh, do you not want me to say what it is?
No, you can. This is the spoiler section.
I thought you were trying to say that. Don't say what it is. Okay. His deal with Telri is that he will give him a bunch of money so that he can become richer than Iadon and become king.
Yeah.
Because Iadon's whole system of government is that the richest person rules, and that they're also going to start using the pirates that are hired by Yordell to attack Iadon's ships, as well as other merchants' ships, but leaving Telri's alone.
I remember that now.
I love how in a lot of the Cosmere books, money equals power. Like,
that's because in real life, money equals power.
Very much so. And this is like the one time it's not money equals power because money can buy magic. Like, or access to,
it's just,
but it's still there.
Maybe that's why it's kind of boring, because this is just economics.
I think this is the one that
I am a crusty old economics professor with a stick up his butt.
This book is the one that has the least magic, like, actively shown on screen.
Yes. And when it does start to reappear, it does so with a vengeance. But
yeah,
it is definitely the least fantastical of the fantastical worlds at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, like, the parallels to how living in a capitalist society affect our lives versus how this government is set up are pretty strong and I think powerful. It's just maybe not as exciting as getting to fly around.
Man, I'm so going to enjoy when we get to Sereni's widow trial. And hey, look at an encroaching capitalist society jutting in on a socialist society and completely messing up everything.
I don't think you can really call what Raoden is setting up a socialist economy yet. It's not even an economy.
It's not an economy, but it's a socialist society.
I guess it's more like a shantytown. Like, you barter because that's what there is. Like,
well, they weren't even bartering. They're just like, we're going to grow food for everybody. Everybody gets food. Everybody
but nobody knows that yet.
Yeah,
I don't
but
think
also
they even get
Raoden's
to a point where they know that.
True.
No,
and
Raoden's like, they start.
I mean, they kind of do because we do see the crops starting to come in, but like,
yeah. And Raoden's dictating what everybody does for a job. It is socialism.
I mean,
I'm not really a socialist. I'm just
and my argument is that if it were bigger, it probably would be socialist or socialist adjacent, but it's too small to be anything. It's like 8 people trying to like not die, except they're
We'll
already
see.
dead.
We'll see as the book goes on. Well, anything else for chapter 9?
I didn't even think there was that much, honestly.
Okay.
Is there
Okay,
a line? Is there a line? Jadith will only return when everyone is converted.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah. There was something you were asking about too earlier. The like souls going into the underworld or whatever.
Jadith below.
Yeah. So I can't remember where it's discussed, whether it's like in the Ars Arcanum or what. But Yadeth was originally like a minor god of the earth. And so to go into his realm with, I mean, of course his realm is below in the earth. Like he's a god of rocks and dirt and stuff.
Whoa.
I forget where that piece of information comes from, but I'm like 90% sure that that's accurate.
Let me check the copper.
I was gonna say somebody got the copper mind open. Let's like ask the actual experts.
Yep, Jadith is a deity on Cell related to rocks and earth.
That's crazy.
He is mentioned in Warren the King, the oldest text on Cell, as a minor god that cared for the rocks and the earth. The originally pantheistic religion later shifted to a monotheism through the teachings of Keseg. Yeah. It was a
So
god
there
idea.
you go.
Cool.
But yeah, this is like the only hint in the actual book itself that I'm aware of that really kind of gives us any inclination of any of that.
Yeah.
I'm just always looking for like, how does this relate to autonomy?
Oh yeah, I've got one of those too.
Yep. Chapter 10. So this is Raoden's first chapter. I love Galadin's line where he's like, "Don't you dare leave when I'm defending myself."
Oh, Galadon.
Which Galadon is lying to him in a little. He's not lying. He's omitting he's omitting facts about his past.
It's a lie of omission.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, I was not an Elantris. Well, your father was an Elantris and you lived in Elantris. What makes you an Elantrian?
I was just a
He
farmer.
wasn't the magical being. He was just the offspring of one.
Yeah.
I feel like Mayeri falls into the same realm as Melland.
Okay.
Because
Please
it's literally
elaborate.
it's a misborn name and they just added it on another letter.
Not really.
It's Mare with an extra A. It's Mare with a
No.
stutter.
Or it's Mary with an extra A.
Yeah.
It made me laugh considering we know of like 2 mares.
Ish.
I'm with you.
Ish.
I'm with you, reader.
Well, okay, there's like 7,000 characters in these books. There's bound to be some similar names at some point. Like,
Yeah. This is also where, let's see, Ian and how he's tied directly to Raoden. And how both are
Oh,
shared.
Eondel? Is that who you're talking about? Who are you
Ian,
talking
the Aeon. Ian the Aeon.
Oh,
Right.
yes.
And
I feel like somebody had a comment on that.
their bond is just really similar to like a Spren bond.
Yes.
yeah, we talked about it last time because we weren't sure how Seons like were made and that there has to be a connection because of the way the Reread affects them when the person they're bonded to is afflicted with it, and also the whole idea of them being passed along with a capital P, which actually I have a note about that later on too.
And
Which
I guess
makes me wonder. Sorry.
No, it's just a really similar, like, it's a similar bond not only in the mechanical way of work it works, but also the relationship that they have.
Yeah. So I wonder if a Radiant that somehow went through this, would their Spren also go through the same madness that a Scion does?
So if
The
you
answer is a
were
resounding maybe.
a Radiant who had the Shaod happen to you,
Yes.
would your Spren go mad?
Yes.
Only if the bond was broken. If the nail
But
bond remained intact, like that's how I'm thinking.
but the thing is, the bond isn't broken with the Scion.
I think the bond is the nail bond is a band-aid that will get replaced later in later eras. But this is something I haven't thought enough about because I just thought of it just now.
What do you mean by a band-aid?
It's the way the Spren bond works now because it's like a stepping stone more than a band-aid, I suppose. Like it's how they figured it out, but later on, I don't think the oaths are going to be like I don't think the Spren bond is going to work quite the same way.
There's going to be an
Sorry.
evolution.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's a better way to put it.
I was thinking something similar too, like with the honor
because
blades.
After the true desolation is solved, there won't be a need for the nail bond. But we know that there's going to continue to be Spren bonds because of the Sunlit Man.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going to undergo some kind of evolution.
Why do you say there won't be a need for the nail bond?
I think it's going to take on like a different form, right? Like because right now the nail bond,
the point of it was to stop the desolations,
right? And it was sort of enabled to create an army that could actually fight the fused.
That would be a cool concept if, like, in book 6, people are like, well, do we even need Radiance anymore?
Well, that might be something that does come up.
That sounds like a pretty safe bet. Like all the little lines of "You're gonna kill me, Shallan." Just like I could totally see that. Where I was coming with the honor blades is like, and I don't remember if this has been explained somewhere, but just like, who and why would anybody make a blade that just gives you access to the surges? Like, we have this whole bond and all these oaths for the whole point of preventing the wrong people from getting access to the surges, and then somebody at some point was like, here's just a sword
the honor blades
that anybody
came
can
first.
use.
Well,
the honor blades.
Yeah, the honor blades came first. The nail bond allows Spren and men to work together to recreate the powers granted by them. Also, those blades were designed and given to the heralds specifically
by honor.
Right.
So that
as part of the oath pact.
That kind of lends credence to what you're saying about the nail bond being more like a band-aid than anything. It's like they were trying to recreate the honor blades.
It was meant to mimic the powers. Okay, but let's go back to Elantris.
Yeah, tangent.
I know Stormlight 5 is right upon us, but let's
give it to me.
It's looming.
Yeah. So, what chapter were we on again?
We were on chapter 10, in which my only last question revolving a Scion is, does a Scion need to be tied, connected to a person to have cognitions, or can there...
No, because we know this because rhythm or the Scion that Shallan has is an unbonded Scion.
Do they say unbonded? Okay. Well, that also answers the question of whether this Scion Harathan has is bonded to him or...
I mean, at this point, it might be... It is probably bonded to Harathan or to Wern. Those are the two that I would find most likely.
Mhm.
Because we don't know. We know that in the future that it is possible to have an unbonded Seon, but we don't know if that's something that is possible at this point in time.
True. Also, can a person have multiple Seons bonded to them? Because we know you can't have that many spread, but could you have like 80 cell phones?
I'm thinking yes, you could have multiple Seon because of the fact that the Seons work differently than the Spren do.
I
Um,
bet there's a way to get multiple Spren.
Well, we know there's a way to get multiple Spren. Shalom.
yeah, but it's also
Okay, but I mean at the same time.
okay. But
I
Brandon
mean,
has said
she
it is
technically is
possible.
still bonded to both Spren.
True. Brandon has said it is great. Well, strong. Brandon has said it is possible to bond like an Ash Spren and a Honor Spren and get both powers. But the problem is the cracks they fill in your spirit web can crisscross, and therefore they butt against each other. And so
Also,
when those are filled up,
your oaths might
contradict.
contradict each
Yes.
other.
I feel like
So it is pop.
we have to reference Stormlight because, as we were talking about earlier, there's so little magic in this book, and the way
Well-
that the Cosmere Magics works, there's some translation between each system. So it's like almost all we have to go off of sometimes.
Yeah.
And
I just don't
also
want us to-
Seon and Spren are basically the same. They're
Yes.
type 1 cognitive
Or
or
type 1
Entity.
invested entities.
Yeah,
Oh,
So-
jeez.
Okay.
they're going to have a lot of similarities.
Chapter 11. So this is the big Sereni chapter.
Oh yeah, this is not a spoiler, but I meant to say this during the regular part. But this has one of my favorite quotes in this book is in this chapter. That I wanted to say. Let me see if I can find it.
Are you going
yeah.
to perform it for us in song?
Yes. Well, not in
Awesome.
song. I'm not gonna do it in song. I'm
Oh,
so
come on, you
sorry.
were just singing.
No.
Come on, yay.
It's the quote by Royal at the end. He's talking to Sereni, and he says, "Do not dash if you only have the strength to walk, and do not waste your time pushing on walls that will not give. More importantly, don't shove where a pat would be sufficient." When talking to her about her bluntness,
I
I
do
just
like
really
that.
like that quote a lot. So that's it. That's all.
I do like
Good
that
quote.
line.
So for my thing, I'm going to have to rely on someone who has a print copy of the book because I loaned mine out years ago and it never made its way back to me. So I will be fixing that next week. But can anyone tell me in chapter 11, Sereni says, "Give them the promise of autonomy." Is that a big A or is that a little A?
Little A.
Oh, that's too bad because that could have been some great foreshadowing. We don't
I
even
don't
know what
think-
autonomy is yet.
Yeah, I don't even think Brandon had autonomy in his mind at that point, though.
Ah, that was just like a golden just
I hear you. I hear you. Anytime that word is used.
right.
Yeah.
Anytime the name of a shard comes up, it's like, oh, is it capitalized?
Yeah. Speaking of Royale, okay, well, Ahan is the one that betrays them later. Spoilers.
Yes.
Royan and Ahan, I think, if it were in a modern day setting, would be like gay husbands. And that's why Ahan is so distraught when Royan
I don't think so.
dies. And like they're always bickering. I can see a chemistry there. I've been watching a lot of the Owl House. I can see it.
I think it's more like the Odd Couple.
It's just the way at the epilogue, like Ahan has to go see everybody, and they still haven't forgiven him for killing Ryan, and he's like super thin, can barely talk. It's like that's not the type of behavior you get from, just killing a friend.
It might be.
mean,
Not everybody is like.
yeah.
Yeah, this
Not
is my
everybody's
head
equipped with fratricide in their blood, you know.
The
Like,
way you
This is
said
also
it,
like if you think about it, like this is his like one of his like best friends.
right? It's his lifetime
Yeah.
buddy.
It's his
I'm just
yeah.
in my head.
Like
It's only friends because they had no concept of.
I've killed several friends and haven't broken a sweat.
At the risk of sounding lewd, I'm pretty sure everybody understands what a boner means. Like,
That's
I
not
do,
what I was
but
saying.
not.
But okay.
I don't understand why you said that.
Yeah, me neither.
yeah, I'm
okay,
confused.
well, I guess edit that out because if nobody gets it, then nobody watching is gonna get it either.
If I
My
can, if
point
you
was
want.
that they're not attracted to each other. There would be some physical indications of that, and they would know what it means.
Hmm.
That goes into the question of, did people in medieval times have?
Have what?
I don't know the correct. Have gayness? No, that's not right.
Yes, they did. They
Yeah,
just said that they were
they very
best
much did.
friends.
Exactly. Just Shakespeare.
Or in
History only remembers it as that.
in sometimes they might have been called inverts.
Yes. I'm just saying this. I feel like this is one of those situations, and it's going to be headcanon in my mind that way.
I mean, fair.
So
And
you're shipping them.
yes, I should them.
That's all you gotta say.
And my own question is, what happened to Cayenne's throat? Because they mentioned a couple of times, like, he's raspy, and Serene's like, I gotta ask him about that.
I can't remember if they ever
They
actually.
do. It's in the Sanderlanche. But basically, it was. It's an allusion to his name as a pirate.
Oh, crushed throat.
Crushed throat. That's it. Not crushed throat. Crushed throat.
No, it's crushed throat.
Apparently, well, that's what everybody called him.
Oh yeah, but it's actually
Yeah. So apparently he took a baseball bat to the larynx or something. Like a 9-iron.
4. Okay. I forgot that was set up.
Hunky K.
It's pretty subtle, but it's there.
Yeah. You
my
get the
only
widow's
other note.
trial. Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say my only other note is for chapter 12. So if we've got nothing else going on, we can.
I was just gonna say, the widow's trial will be Serene, trying to help Elantris.
Yeah.
Chapter 12. What is it, John?
So we find out in chapter 12 that yes, in fact, the production of Seons is tied to Elantris. They were made by Elantrians, and we find that out because Rathan tells us so. In his little
Yes.
explanation of the heathen magics that he's unlocking with his special key in his puzzle box.
And okay, now I can go into detail what I think. So there's a part later in the book where Rathan finds out Delof was like going through his tent. And I feel like if you were to push this all the way to then, it would have a much greater impact. And like have Delof have it be like he's trying to contact
disagree.
like have Delof contacting the Warren through the box. And then he has to pass it off to Rathan as, hey, I found this talking, heresy box in your stuff. And I'm going to make a big deal out of it here.
If it happened that way, it would be Deus Ex Machina. It would just be like, oh, all of a sudden Rathan has a Seon and Delof found it, and what? Like that.
Well,
no,
you can have lines
work.
like, he's been in communication with the Wern, and like, wow, how'd you do that? That's like faster than any horse could have gotten a letter. Like, I'm not just saying cut paste, but there would be like some stuff. But I feel like there's nothing in this chapter that can't be done better in later chapters.
But the thing about it is that he doesn't only use the Sion to contact Wern. He also
He
uses
also
the Sion
contacts
to
the king.
contact he uses it to contact the apothecarist, the potion maker, to ask him to make potions for him.
The poison that makes him look like an Elantrian?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't remember him using it that.
Yes, he does, because he makes a comment about how the poison maker thinks that he is like using some kind of like magic prayer to
Yeah,
contact him
he
through
says
the
you can pray to me
Sion.
anytime.
Yeah.
I'm just a bit disappointed with this second half of the chapter. It's just,
I mean, that's fair. That is your opinion.
if you want like the exclamation of the sound, you can't have the boring Wern aspect attached to it.
Why do you think the
Boring.
Wern aspect is boring?
Because this is supposed to be the ultimate. This is the guy who's, Hitler of the religion, right? I speak the word of God, tell you guys, hey, go conquer that place, because I believe it to be so. And there's no weight to this moment. And it is literally the same exact chapter ender, where it's like, hey, I got a plan. You want to hear about it?
I mean, in that respect, sure, but I don't think that changing the position of this reveal in the book increases or decreases its impact in any way. Like, okay, we know, Evil Pope is using the forbidden magics to talk to his priests.
But that's the thing. Don't show the Wern at all. Like, I feel like that should be
Right, and
something
that's the part
safe
you're objecting
completely
to,
for them.
not the use of the Seon, which is what's important.
I'm fine. Yes and no. I think the Seon has to be tied directly to the call. Yes, but I also feel like the Seon could be used at a later point where, like, the build up to having a Seon being wrong was better done and
So you're more mad
built
at the
to.
setup, the fact that you feel like there wasn't enough setup to make it like be like as shocking that he has a
Yes.
Seon.
Okay, and
If we're
that,
just focusing on the
That's-
Seon, yes.
I guess I can agree with that, because you could have had an actual call out where they say Elantris and its magics are heresy and evil. Oh wait, we have that.
But it's by Delofs, and Delof, like, hates everything. But to have, like, Harathan have to speak about it, or other people comment about it, or maybe they see, what's Serene's Aeon?
But see, here's the thing, is that Harathan doesn't think that like the Elantris magic is necessarily like heretical or like wrong or whatever.
Right.
Like that's not the way that he thinks.
Yeah, I think adding that kind of setup, all it does is undermine Harathan's character as being on the level, and it makes him seem more hypocritical.
Yeah.
Yes, I just feel like if you, like, maybe at the last chapter when you had, like, Deoff, maybe, like, he sees Ashy and he, like, calls out to it, and maybe Serene has to defend it, and Harathan's, like, strangely quiet. I just feel like,
I think there's another aspect too. It's like, a lot of times you're writing a novel and it's kind of like, hey, there's not a lot going in the scene. Maybe some bandits attack. There's no fight scenes really in this book, so maybe that Sion at the end there was just a little bit of way to add some color to it. Just a little something that you can kind of give away.
I agree, but it's just like, it's a dull color that, like, if all this is in black and white, it's a brown, which is still more color, but it's not explosive red.
Like, I remember
that's perfectly fine.
The time and place where I was when I was reading this, and the thoughts I was having of just my mind being blown. But I get
That's-
where you're coming
And
from.
if it is lackluster in any way, which I really think it's I certainly couldn't do better. But if it is lackluster in any way, we can chalk it up to being a first published novel, right? This is still early in the career. The
Yes.
toolbox is still being developed. Like, it should, in theory, always be in development. So this is, like, I mean, if we really have to color it in some kind of light, I would rather we chalk it up to a lack of experience on the author's part rather than any particular fault of it. Just because it serves the purpose it needs to do, even if it's not as interesting as it might have been if it was written 5 years later.
And that's just it. I'm not hating it. It's just compared to what I know Brandon can do, it's missing something.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
my point. You're taking this early book and
Yes.
comparing it to all his later works and going, wow, he's really improved, except you're not saying
Yes.
it that way. You're saying it as, this could have been better.
Brandon could do it better nowadays, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I will not disagree with that.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else
Trucking
for
right
12?
along.
Yeah. I feel like I've complained about that aspect a little too much.
13.
13. The big one. I love the little detail that a lot of the books were on geology, I think he said,
Yes.
or geography.
Geography.
Geography, almost something that a farmer might need.
No, it's not, because I think he just liked geography.
There were some books on like weather patterns and stuff like that, but maybe that is more what led Galadon down his interests than any kind of, oh hey, I read a book on this once, that seems fun, like I think it's,
No, I'm not saying he
that.
wrote the book. I'm just saying it ties into the secret that, oh, this is sort of my library. This is my dad's library.
Sure.
That's what I'm hinting at.
And him being so upset about the books getting taken out.
Yeah.
I think that's a much bigger clue.
That's
Yeah.
also it.
I think that if I remember correctly, I think Galadon's dad was a farmer before he became an Elantrian as well, which is partially why he went into farming.
Yes, I believe that is also correct.
Yes.
I see a note here. Blood doesn't flow. Why doesn't it congeal?
Yes.
It's because the body is trapped in between. It's not experiencing time. Like, it's not doing what bodies do.
Their bodies are being put in stasis.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit weird considering they still have movements and brain function. Okay, magic stasis. And I was wondering if maybe the blood does congeal just extremely slowly, and that's why Elantrians do sort of age with the wrinkles around the face or something.
Maybe.
That's where
explained it in this book or anywhere else what the Shaod actually is. I mean, we know it's like the chasm preventing the door from coming through the Aeons, right?
So it's the process by which a regular person becomes an Elantrian, and when the chasm opened up, that process broke, and it can't complete anymore. It's kind of like putting a switch in the middle of a circuit, right? Like they literally opened up a path in the circuitry, and until they close it again, i.e., drawing that missing line, it can't do what it's supposed to do.
So they're getting like halfway to Elantrian status, but not all the way.
So it's kind of like they took out. It's like they opened you up and took out like your OS, and they're gonna put another one in, but that never happened, and now you're just like,
it's stuck at 50% on that load screen, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Napster. It's like 98% downloaded. The rest is going to take 37 years.
Oh, I love those. I loved watching it go from like 5 minutes, 12 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 57 years.
I think we're giving away a little
Our
bit about
age.
our age.
But I
Yeah.
guess it makes sense. Like if you become an Elantrian, I don't know how it works, but I assume you're getting like the magic flowing through you, right?
Yeah, the door, the magic of the, the power of the door kind of transforms your body. We don't really know anything more specific than that.
Especially
Other than
considering if the AM is broken, why is it still changing people?
So
yeah,
just
so
like
the analogy of an electric circuit isn't exactly perfect, but maybe like a water circuit, and it's been stepped on or something. I don't know.
Well, it's like a water pipe that's clogged. That's
Right.
like it
And
like
there's back pressure.
yeah, some water is still getting through and it's
Just
enough to be able to like change people, but it's not like
it's not enough
enough.
to finish the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it almost seems like there's like a robot with no battery or a car with no gas or something. Just like
Yeah.
it's missing the thing that makes it work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love how Raoden is a much better person than his dad.
His
He's like,
dad's an asshole.
so he's like, I may not like my father, but I won't let him die. Meanwhile, Iadon is literally praying to get rid of his son and killing people.
He really is,
And
Elend.
actively killing people.
Yeah. Um, if it grows, they will feed. And yeah, that's it.
I liked your note in the homework that was like, why does the coughing fits disfigure someone so much?
Yes.
Maybe they
that was
literally cough their faces inside out.
yeah. That was back in chapter 11, and it's like the coughing shivers can ruin a man's face or something. I was like, really?
What do they call
Maybe
Like
they
that
cough
one-
so hard that they pop blood vessels in their face.
I guess, but that one just sounds like excuses.
Yeah, they could have named the disease they used a little better, but I think that's the point. It's supposed to be suspicious.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. I got nothing else.
I think I've all talked out.
The most outspoken men are usually the something.
There you go.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, that will just about cover it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us on our Randoms and Predictions. This has been Cosmere Connections, and we hope to see you next time. Bye.
Adios.
Bye. All right. Counting down. 3, 2, 1. Engage.
By the way, Kay, you can update the dead characters counter.
You say
Hurts
that
me.
like she's been waiting to put Ellen's name on there.
Yeah.
Every time she's seen me happy about Ellen, I know she has been.
I love Ellen. I know.
You're making Kay out to be like some kind of weird evil like.
She is the villain of my
Yeah.
story.
Oh, dude.
I killed him. I ruined everything you love. That's awesome.
I think my new favorite thing is the picture of Kay with all of the merch.
Right? That was the best.
I think
With all the Ellen merch.
I told the
I
animator,
love
hey, give her
Ellen.
like an Ellen body pillow, and then they're just like, oh, I'm gonna give them everything.
Yeah. It's like,
Oh,
I'm
it's
Ellen's
so
number one
good.
fan. Excuse you. Like, what?